Imagine reading a real estate listing that, it doesn't even bother mentioning the square footage for the first several paragraphs.
Right, or the roof age, or like the plumbing.
Exactly. Instead, it actively diagnoses your deep-seated urban burnout. I mean, it identifies the exact source of your modern anxiety, and then it promises to cure it.
It's wild to see it in action.
It really is. So
Yeah.
today we are looking at the masterful psychology of how a pretty standard 1993 ranch home in Indiana is transformed into this irresistible lifestyle dream for you.
A total sanctuary.
Yeah. We're dissecting a beautifully crafted property listing and the marketing material that goes with it, written by a top-tier Indiana realtor named Cara Conde.
And it is a masterclass in marketing.
It really is. So our mission for this deep dive is twofold. First, we're going to break down the sheer mechanics of how a physical structure, wood, glass, siding, is elevated into a psychological sanctuary.
Because it's never just about the wood and glass.
Never. And second, we are going to examine the jarring, honestly, almost unbelievable duality of the professional behind this pitch. Okay, let's unpack this.
I'm ready. I mean, it's a brilliant piece of marketing to study because it operates on so many hidden layers.
Right.
We aren't just looking at the blueprints of a house today. We're analyzing the deep-seated psychology of what the whole concept of home represents to a modern buyer.
Which is a heavy concept.
Extremely heavy. And through the lens of this specific listing, we get a very revealing window into the booming, highly competitive real estate landscape of central Indiana.
Yeah, that market is completely on fire right now.
Exactly. The stakes in that market are incredibly high. And to succeed, the marketing has to manipulate both deep emotion and, well, cold, hard economics simultaneously.
Which is quite the balancing act. So the text itself is this absolute masterclass in sensory manipulation. The property in question is located at 1577 N Santee Drive.
Right, in Indiana.
Yeah. And if you look at a black and white data sheet, it's a 1993 ranch-style home. It has new siding, fresh windows, a massive deck, and a private dock.
Pretty standard lake property specs.
Exactly. But if you just read those bullet points, your brain immediately starts calculating like value, age, and maintenance costs.
You're thinking analytically. You're doing the math.
You're doing the math, but the listing doesn't let you do that. It intercepts your analytical brain with this pure novelistic prose. I mean, it literally opens with the line, "It begins with a single breath."
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is it forces a physical reaction from the reader right out of the gate.
Yeah.
I mean, before you can even think about property taxes, you're instructed to imagine taking a deep breath.
It's so clever. And from there, the text paints this incredibly vivid morning routine. It describes waking up before your alarm goes off.
Which is a dream in itself.
Right. Drawn out of bed by something deeper than just your daily schedule. It puts you right in the scene. Like your bare feet hitting cool hardwood floors, sliding open a glass door to this hushed world.
It's very cinematic.
Very. It talks about a thin veil of mist floating over the lake, describing it like whispered secrets between old friends.
That's real poetry.
And then you picture a lone base breaking the water's surface. It deliberately invokes the smell of pine, the water, and what it calls that unmistakable scent of possibility.
Wow. When you look closely at the language there, the pitch is surgically targeting a very specific demographic,
It's the overworked urban professional.
Precisely. It explicitly describes the feeling of the city melting off your shoulders. It offers an antidote to the stress, the noise, and what the text identifies as the constant pull of more.
The constant pull of more. I love that phrasing.
It's a profound psychological hook. It isn't just selling you a deck and some new windows. It's diagnosing a modern condition.
The burnout.
Right. That pervasive feeling of being overwhelmed, overstimulated, disconnected from nature. The listing positions this 1993 ranch home as the sole cure.
Like it's medicine.
Exactly. Promising to replace all that latent anxiety with the life you didn't know you were missing.
It reminds me of those really high-end luxury car commercials.
Oh, yeah, the moody ones?
Yes. You picture a sleek vehicle gliding effortlessly along this winding, completely empty coastal highway at sunset.
And there's always a famous actor doing a voiceover.
Right, a raspy voiceover about freedom and forging your own path. When you watch that, they aren't selling you the metal chassis. They aren't selling you the fuel efficiency or, the anti-lock brakes.
Well, nobody cares about the brakes in those commercials.
Exactly. They're selling you the feeling of the wind in your hair. They are selling you an escape from your ordinary, traffic-jammed commute. The house is just the vehicle for the escape.
The mechanism is identical. By loading the front end of the pitch with sensory details like the cool hardwood, the scent of pine, the marketing, entirely bypasses the critical faculties of the brain.
Because you're just feeling it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Olfactory memory, for instance, is incredibly powerful. When a reader imagines the scents of pine and lake water, their nervous system might actually begin to experience a mild relaxation response.
Just from reading the words.
Yeah, before they've even finished reading the paragraph.
That emotional high is incredibly potent. But, eventually a car has to park and a house is stuck on a piece of dirt.
Right, that the fantasy meets reality.
Yeah, the poetic escape has to anchor itself to a physical map. So according to the text, this property sits on Lake Santee, nestled in the rolling hills northeast of Greensburg, Indiana.
Okay.
The community specs detail a 250-acre private, pristine lake maintained by a property owners association.
Got it.
And it comes loaded with amenities. I mean, we're talking beaches, boat ramps, tennis courts, clubs, community events.
So it grounds the mist and the pine trees in a highly structured environment.
It does. But, and here's the thing, when you look at the raw numbers provided in the text, a massive contradiction jumps out at you.
Okay, what is it?
The listing notes that Lake Santee is a 1,680 lot community.
Oh, wow. That's big.
Right. Think about the logistics of that. If even half of those lots have active families and boats out on a summer weekend, that hushed lake with the lone base breaking the surface.
It's going to sound like a busy theme park.
Exactly. It's going to be loud. So how does the author reconcile the feeling of this isolated private oasis with the reality of buying into a massive subdivision with over 1,000 neighbors?
Yeah, this is where the marketing strategy elevates from just good to exceptional. The author, Conde, she doesn't hide the size of the community. She actually actively reframes the density into a psychological asset.
How so?
Well, she isn't actually selling total off-the-grid isolation. Sociologically speaking, true isolation, like buying a cabin 50 miles from the nearest grocery store,
Right.
that can be terrifying to an urban buyer. It sounds super romantic until the power goes out in a snowstorm or you need an ambulance.
Oh, yeah, then it's a nightmare.
Exactly. The modern buyer wants the illusion of escape, but with the safety net of civilization.
So she's selling a highly curated version of community, almost like a nostalgic 1950s sitcom neighborhood.
She leans heavily into that nostalgia. The text specifically highlights having real neighbors who actually remember your name and bring you fresh tomatoes from their garden.
Oh, that's such a specific, comforting image.
It is. She mentions community fireworks on the 4th of July and a place that still believes in porch lights and looking out for one another.
So she's flipping the script.
Totally. She is taking the potential liability of having 1,680 lots and repackaging it as this vibrant, welcoming village. The text explicitly states that the community is private enough to feel exclusive, alive enough to feel like belonging.
Wow. Alive enough to feel like belonging. That is a brilliant piece of copyright.
It really is.
It totally covers the fact that you will absolutely see other people on the water, but it dictates how you should feel about them. Like, they aren't an annoyance crowding your lake. They are the charming fabric of your new life.
It manages the buyer's expectations beautifully. It neutralizes that fear of isolation while still delivering the promise of exclusivity.
Which brings us to another major objection the listing has to neutralize. We've established the location, the community vibe, but if you are selling a waterfront dream in the American Midwest...
Oh, the weather.
Yeah, there is a massive obstacle standing in your way. What happens when summer ends?
Right.
A lake house is a really easy sell in July when everyone just wants to be on a boat. It is a much harder sell in February when the wind chill is like well below zero.
The seasonal dilemma is the biggest hurdle for any vacation property in a temperate climate.
So the way the text handles this is fascinating. It uses this Four Seasons chapter approach to script out the entire year for the buyer.
Okay, so walking them through the calendar.
Exactly. Summer is exactly what you'd expect, right? Electric, long golden days, water skiing, fireworks across the lake.
Sure.
Then fall is described as a painter's masterpiece of blazing oranges and reds, crisp mornings for fishing, and hot cider on the massive deck.
Sounds idyllic.
It does, but here's where it gets really interesting. The winter description.
This is the critical pivot in the entire pitch.
We all know winter in Indiana can be harsh. It's gray, it's incredibly long, but the text doesn't apologize for winter or, try to gloss over it.
It tackles it head on.
It leans in, it rebrands winter as a private snow globe.
Oh, a snow globe.
Yeah, it describes the lake freezing into a serene mirror. It paints this cozy picture of a crackling fireplace, fat snowflakes dancing across the frozen water, and hot chocolate mornings with board games in the walkout basement.
Wow.
It takes the absolute worst weather the region has to offer and turns it into the ultimate cozy escape where time finally slows down. And then seamlessly, spring brings the wildflowers, the renewal, and the ritual of pulling the boat out of storage again.
This raises an important question about perceived value. The underlying strategy here fundamentally alters the buyer's internal risk and reward calculus.
What do you mean?
Well, when someone considers buying a seasonal property, their logical brain kicks in. If you are only going to use a property for 3 or 4 months out of the year, the price tag often feels exorbitant.
Like you're wasting money the other 8 months.
Right. It feels like a frivolous luxury. But by taking the time to script out the entire year, season by season, the listing elevates the property from a part-time vacation spot to a permanent, year-round life reset.
It completely justifies the massive financial investment. Because if you are buying the fall cider mornings and the winter snow globe just as much as the summer water skiing, it's no longer just a summer house.
Exactly.
It's an essential foundational piece of your family's well-being.
Overcoming an objection through narrative restructuring like that
Mhm.
actually creates more perceived value than if the objection never existed in the first place.
That makes so much sense.
The harsh winter isn't a liability you have to endure. It's a feature you get to enjoy.
You read through that seasonal breakdown and you genuinely think, yes, I need a walkout basement and a board game immediately.
Right. Sign me up.
But the second part of our mission today requires us to look behind the curtain. We've spent all this time analyzing this poetic, sensory-rich, highly emotional narrative.
The art of the sale.
Exactly. Now we need to look at the architect of this dream. When you dig into Cara Conde's broader professional profile, the story takes a wildly unexpected turn.
Her portfolio is a study in extreme professional contrasts.
It really is. Based on the listing, you know she's a luxury home marketing specialist. You know she leverages cutting-edge digital tech and immersive storytelling to sell these million-dollar lakeside escapes.
That fits perfectly with everything we just discussed.
It totally fits. But when you examine her extensive catalog of published articles and professional expertise, you find a jarring duality. The very same person writing lyrical prose about sunrises that reset your soul and kids chasing fireflies.
Yeah.
She is actively publishing dense, highly technical guides on hardcore commercial real estate investing.
She operates at a very high level in two completely distinct sectors of the industry.
Like, completely distinct. We are talking about articles titled Cap Rate Unveiled, Understanding the Ins and Outs of a Commercial Lease, and an in-depth guide to internal rate of return.
That is heavy math.
Yeah, she is breaking down 131 exchanges, SBA 504 loans, self-storage investments, and the intricacies of the Indianapolis warehouse market.
For those unfamiliar with the terminology, these aren't light topics. A 1031 exchange, for example, is essentially a highly regulated legal mechanism.
Okay, break that down for us.
It allows a real estate investor to sell a property and completely defer paying capital gains taxes, provided they roll that money directly into a new like-kind property within a very strict time frame.
So it's basically a massive tax strategy.
Exactly. It requires precise mathematical calculations and an encyclopedic knowledge of tax law.
And she's writing about mastering DSCR, which is the debt service coverage ratio. That's a formula commercial lenders use to determine if a property like a massive warehouse or a retail center generates enough cash flow to pay its own mortgage.
Right. It's the ratio of net operating income to total debt service.
Yep.
If your DSCR is under 1, your property is losing money.
Wow. She's also detailing the HUD 221-4 loan program for multifamily construction.
Which is incredibly complex.
It is a completely different universe of language. I mean, how does an agent switch gears from writing romantic poetry about the scent of pine to analyzing the rigid, unforgiving mathematics of equity multiples and net operating income?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it seems contradictory on the surface, but if you analyze the specific geographic market she operates in, that duality isn't just a quirk. It is an absolute necessity for survival at the highest levels of the industry.
Really? How so?
The central Indiana market is a unique economic ecosystem.
Yeah, the materials point to a very specific footprint, right? Carmel, Fishers, Zionsville, Avon, Noblesville, Westfield, Brownsburg. These aren't just sleepy rural
Far
towns.
from it. That region has transformed into a massive economic hub. You have major developments happening constantly.
Oh, absolutely.
Fishers, for example, is seeing a huge influx of high-tech and corporate development. The logistics and warehouse market in areas like Plainfield is booming because of its central location for distribution across the entire country.
Right, it's the crossroads of America.
Exactly. You have immense wealth and corporate investment pouring into the greater Indianapolis area, driven heavily by people and businesses relocating from high-cost coastal areas.
The sources highlight exactly that migration pattern. There are articles specifically targeting the relocation market, like San Francisco to Carmel, Indiana, the smart relocation choice.
Yes.
And there are detailed breakdowns comparing the exorbitant cost of living in places like Antioch, California, to the relative affordability and high quality of life in Fishers, Indiana.
When you have that kind of wealth migration, you are dealing with a very specific psychological profile of a buyer, the high net worth individual.
Right.
To serve that client effectively, you cannot be a one-trick pony. You have to possess a rare, seamless dual fluency.
Because the person buying the warehouse is the exact same person buying the lake house.
That is the crucial insight. The client who needs to park millions of dollars into a tax-advantaged 1031 exchange to secure an industrial warehouse in Plainfield
Yeah.
is very likely the exact same individual looking to buy a luxury waterfront property on Lake Santee or Geist Reservoir so their family can escape the stress of building that wealth.
It's a closed-loop ecosystem. You help them secure their generational wealth with the SBA 504 loan and the complex tax strategies, and then you turn around and sell them the sanctuary where they can decompress from the pressure of managing all that wealth.
But you have to earn their trust in both arenas.
Which is the hardest part.
Absolutely.
Right.
If you only speak the language of fireflies and sunsets, the commercial investor will never trust you with their multi-million-dollar portfolio. They will view you as a lightweight.
They won't think you can handle the math.
Right. Conversely, if you only speak the language of cap rates and net operating income, the luxury homebuyer will feel that you lack the emotional intelligence to understand their lifestyle needs and their personal anxieties.
Whoa, that's such a good point.
The true powerhouse professional bridges that gap effortlessly. They apply the same level of strategic rigor to framing a private snow globe winter as they do to calculating a debt service coverage ratio.
It is genuinely impressive to see the architecture of that strategy laid bare.
It really makes you appreciate the hustle.
It does. So what does this all mean for you, the listener, as you navigate the world? Let's recap the ground we've covered today.
We've covered a lot.
We started on the misty, pine-scented morning docks of a 1993 ranch home on Lake Santee, examining how sensory language bypasses analytical thinking.
Yep.
We explored how the pitch actively managed the contradiction of a 1,680-lot community by framing it as a nostalgic, welcoming village. We saw how it strategically neutralized the threat of a harsh Midwest winter, turning a massive liability into a cozy, year-round asset.
The snow globe.
The snow globe. And finally, we zoomed out to look at the hard-nosed commercial investment landscape of central Indiana, realizing that the poet selling the emotional dream is also the mathematician managing the commercial reality.
The ultimate takeaway from dissecting a masterclass like this is recognizing the true function of top-tier marketing. It doesn't just lazily blend art and science to sell a product.
No, it's way more targeted than that.
Exactly. The very best marketing diagnoses a specific, modern anxiety, whether it's the crush of urban burnout or the complex stress of wealth management, and positions the product as the sole, indispensable antidote.
Once you see the underlying mechanics, you can't unsee them. And that leaves me with one final provocative thought for you to mull over as you go about your day.
Let's hear it.
We just saw how a simple 1993 ranch home, a basic structure of wood, glass, and siding, could be elevated into a soul-resetting magical escape simply by shifting the narrative and highlighting the right sensory details.
Right.
It makes you wonder what ordinary, everyday spaces in your own life could be completely transformed right now if you simply changed the lens through which you viewed them.
A fantastic question to leave us with.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll see you next time.